Yes, welcome to the England pod. We are all England all the time, and that means we are recapping England's 2-0 win against Andorra on Saturday evening. We're also previewing what feels like a pretty massive game in many ways against Serbia in Belgrade on Tuesday night. England beat Andorra 2-0, an own goal in the first half, assisted by Noni Madueke. A Declan Rice header in the second half, assisted by Reece James. What are your thoughts on the game?
Not much. I feel like we've seen this game many times before. I'm quite, as I said on these pods previously, I just wish we could see England playing against some good teams between major tournaments, but that doesn't tend to happen. At the moment, Andorra, as we saw in the first game against them, are quite resolute defensively. They know what they want to do. That isn't score goals. They want to frustrate, and they're relatively good at doing it. It was a game where we learnt very little, but there were no injuries. And certainly, I would say a star was born, if a star can be born, against Andorra, with quite clearly the best player on the pitch being Elliot Anderson making his England debut. Brought in to play at the base of midfield from basically kick-off. It was very evident that he was the most up for it, the player who was going to, if they could, try and take the game by the scruff of the neck, drop in between the centre-backs, pick up the ball, try not only to retain possession, but break lines with his passing. He should have got a goal. It was, critics may say he should have done better with the opportunity, but it was a magnificent save from my perspective from the Andorra keeper that prevented him from getting a debut goal. And, so I would say that the two main positives from this were, well, three. We won. We didn't see anyone go off injured. And, Elliot Anderson has probably gone from being a player that no one really expected to start for England anytime soon to being one who I think just will start on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this match dozens of times before. We've even seen this match a couple of times already under Thomas Tuchel. We've played 4 qualifiers. We've won all of them to 0. None of them have got the pulse racing. We've scored 8 goals in those games, which, I think is actually below the goal expectancy for 3 home games against Albania, Latvia, and Andorra, and then the away game in Andorra. But we've only faced 12 shots in that time as well. So just zero jeopardy on these games whatsoever. And then, of course, the one strong team we've played, Senegal, in that friendly in June, made us look bang average, which means that, as you say, no major takeaways because no major learnings. And we know from a few decades of history that there's literally nothing that can happen in qualifiers against Andorra that could possibly make anyone excited, other than, thankfully, someone making their debut and doing really well. And imagine if Jordan Henderson had played instead of Elliot Anderson and the same game had happened and we didn't have Anderson to talk positively about, there really would be very little to kind of cause excitement. I do get a bit frustrated with references to, it's just like Southgate ball. I mean, I'm starting to think it's not really manager specific. It's just England in qualifiers playing against minnow nations and finding it difficult to break them down. Like, the players always say it's difficult to break down a low block with 10 men behind the ball. The managers always say, and Tuchel has said repeatedly, trying to break down a well-organised 5-4-1 is like trying to sort of chew gum, which was a great analogy, by the way. Like, not all nations find it as difficult as us, though. Like, I don't just accept that as an excuse, if you like, for us, for it being like pulling teeth most of the time. So whether it's a footballing English DNA, some sort of psychological English DNA, I don't know. But we did have someone pointing out that, like, Portugal, Spain, Germany, they don't seem to find it as difficult as we seem to play this sort of game. But I think it's worth pointing out that we win. We almost always win. We almost always win to 0 in these games, and we almost always win by more than 1 goal in these games. So part of it is just our own expectations, like not just to win, but be entertained as well. And I'm not really sure we've ever worked out what that would feasibly look like, being entertained by England in a qualifier in September against Andorra. I think it's almost impossible to achieve. But the last thing I would say is I do think, and I've said it a couple of times, and it's difficult to measure this, and people may disagree, I still think that the speed in which we are playing, both in terms of our passing, but certainly our counter-pressing and what we do when we lose the ball or where the ball is cleared, I think that has increased under Tuchel. compared to the majority of the Southgate era and certainly the end of his reign. It hasn't led to more goals, more shots, and much more excitement. So you might say it doesn't matter very much. But I thought it was worth making the point. Like, I do think we do look a bit zippier, or at least trying to be a bit zippier. It's just not leading to anything particularly exciting at the moment. When it comes to Elliot Anderson, yeah, speed is what springs to mind with his performance. It's the speed of his passing that I like, and that's in two different ways. That's how quickly he receives and passes the ball. He doesn't take an extra touch. He doesn't need a lot of time to get the ball under control. He doesn't need a lot of time to look up and work out where he's going to pass it next. I really appreciate that. And, you know, it's been very established now that Declan Rice is not in his natural position when he plays as England's deepest midfielder. So hopefully it's not a criticism, because I don't mean it to be, to suggest that when he's the one having 125 touches like Anderson did, it does sometimes look a little bit slower, and his distribution doesn't look quite as smooth and slick and quick as Anderson's does. So that was a real positive. And of course it unlocked Rice to do what he does best, and he demonstrated it with a header at the back post, arriving into the box or a cross out wide. For a team, George, that doesn't... Well, the one thing that's very clearly lacking to me is box presence, for want of a less annoying phrase. Like, we've got Harry Kane, who's our greatest ever goal scorer, and generally finishes his chances pretty well. But at the moment, it doesn't feel like he is a dominant box presence, right? And I'm talking about some of the other major strikers in European football, and we might see some of them on Tuesday night in the form of Mitro, in the form of Vlahovic, in the form of Jovic. It'd be interesting to see how well they play against us. But even outside of Kane, when Bellingham's not playing, who in our team are you thinking is going to get inside the box and dominate, you know, and score goals and be a massive goal threat? Well, Declan Rice, basically, and he proved that with his goal, which I thought was really, really good. Is there anyone else that caught your eye? Madueke getting a bit of love. Reece James, of course, with that fantastic assist for Rice's goal, and quite a few other dangerous crosses from the right.
I thought the right side, especially the first half, was clearly the area we were causing the troubles from. I think, you know, it's interesting how often players, when they're injured, their reputation kind of skyrockets when they're out. Whereas with Reece James, it kind of feels like maybe the opposite's happened, because there's just been an assumption that he's never going to be fit for a long time ever again. Maybe that's true, but I think we're kind of forgetting that Reece James, had he stayed fit and before he had his injury issues, was arguably the best right back in the world. And, you know, when he is playing well, is a phenomenal footballer and a massive, massive player for us. You know, the delivery for the second goal was obviously very good, but he was good throughout the first half. Rashford,
I was going to say, if the thing about Trent missing, which is constantly being referenced, is that we miss his passing and his crossing and his creativity, if James is playing in his spot, is that a massive drop off on that front? No, I would say probably not when he's in top form. There's
a level to which I think Trent is a bit of a genius on the ball at times, where he does stuff that other people can't do. But I definitely agree that there isn't, you know, in terms of consistency, that drop off. And you know, Trent should be the person who makes us a bit more unpredictable against these kind of teams. But we've seen in the past that isn't the case. Like, he's been on the pitch for a lot of very, very turgid England performances, both in major tournaments and outside of them. Rashford obviously started the game very lively with that quite fun nutmeg one, where the player went to ground and he got up and then he sent him to ground again, having put the ball through his legs. But it kind of felt like if he's just... For that left-hand side is obviously where he's most effective, but it's just always the same. He basically just stands the defender up and basically tries to push it through them and then run onto it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I know I'm a broken record here, but I just would wish that we could see what Grealish has done in the first two games for Everton in that position, because I have a feeling he'd be more effective.
The over under on Jack Grealish mentions was 7.5 minutes. So anyone who backed the over, surprised, but you paid out.
Thank you. It's because you spoke for so long to start the pod. But you're right, because obviously, I mean, I thought Eze was pretty frustrating again. You know, he's a player that obviously you and I both adore, but I kind of can't get away from the fact that he hasn't really had a game in an England shirt yet where you've come away thinking, yes, you know, welcome to the party, which is frustrating, but I'm sure it will come. So you don't want to make big takeaways out of these games, really, do you? No, I mean, Anderson is obviously the one. I'd also say the other thing to take away from last night, in my mind, it's just a bit of a shame that we didn't see Ollie Watkins come on. Nothing to do necessarily with the fact that he was at Villa Park and there would have been a lot of Villa fans very excited to see him come on. I just don't really understand why. Like, are we really going to... The only possible explanation is to keep Harry Kane on the pitch against Andorra so that he can score more England goals. And for a manager who's been very clear in terms of what he's been brought in to do and what he has, I just can't imagine for a second that Kane isn't going to start on Tuesday. So, if the whole idea is I'm here to win, is really playing a guy who seemingly wasn't fit last summer in the Euros, who's obviously had injury issues, who's played a lot of football already for Bayern. Was there any need to play him for the full game? I don't really understand the thinking there, but it's not a big deal.
It seems like Tuchel, one of the first things he decided when he got the job was that Harry Kane will play every single minute that he can. And so I don't need to worry about the striker situation because any other striker will at best play 10, 15 minutes off the bench and probably when we're chasing the game. And it's almost like he's forgotten about the striker position because he's made that decision, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I think that's what's happened.
Decision in Germany, we'd have been out sooner than the final. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Look at history, but yeah.
Yeah, Madueke's had 2 good games against Andorra, which may not count for much, but very specifically doing the things that Tuchel has asked his wingers to do. He gets the ball and he gets the ball into the box through dribbling. And we saw it a couple of times here. There was one amazing dribble which set up a chance for Eze, which was well saved in the second half. I just really appreciate his mentality when it comes to dribbling. We've discussed, and we saw it last night, that his final ball is not amazing. And it's heightened by the fact that we see him have to shoot and cross quite a lot, because normally when he gets it, he does get into those positions. So there are some that would appreciate the fact that he gets to those positions in the first place, more so than a Rashford. And then there are some who would rather focus on the fact that his final action isn't quite as good as most of our players. But I just love the fact that he doesn't seem to care. It doesn't really affect him when he does a bad cross or a bad shot. He just keeps going. And I do quite like that from a mentality point of view. He's jumped up the kind of wide forward power rankings in the last 2 camps, partly because he's just been there. He's shown up, and when he's got a start, he's done some pretty good stuff that Tuchel wants to see. And I wouldn't say most of the wide players that have played have grabbed those opportunities. And of course, we've been missing so many players, Saka in particular, which means that, by the time he comes back, there's going to be fewer opportunities for these guys. So yeah, Madueke jumping up the power rankings for sure. And I wonder if he's earned himself another start against Serbia on Tuesday night. 11 shots in total for England when you have over 80% possession. It's just not very many. It could be a tactical thing. We barely took a single shot from range. It was as if, like Tuchel had said, I would rather us continue to work on specific detail in the last 20 yards, 18 yards than just have a go from range. But God, it would be so nice to feel like we have a threat of some sort from the edge of the box. Not at the moment. We still haven't got very close to scoring from a set piece, which is a bit of a worry, to be honest. Low margin tournament games, it's great to know that you're a sort of net positive team from set piece situations, and at the moment, God knows how many corners and set plays we've had in the last 5 games, but I don't think we've scored from one, and I don't think we've gone particularly close either, so that's something I'd like to see improve. And we have a chance to improve all of that stuff, George, on Tuesday night, Serbia away. We'll be at the Volley in Old Street, hopefully with some of you guys coming to watch, and as mentioned at the top of the show, please do let us know if you are coming, just for numbers purposes. I don't know how much every pod we should discuss the wider fan feeling and general vibes around Tuchel and whether it was the right appointment or not, and how we're all feeling about the World Cup and what matters and what doesn't matter, because there's only so much variety that we can bring to those conversations. But this game does feel fairly pivotal in a few different ways. It's the hardest game that we'll have between now and the World Cup. Now, Serbia are ranked 32nd in the world rankings, and Wales are ranked 31st. So, in that sense, Wales, the slightly higher ranked side, but that's at home, and it's a friendly. This is a World Cup qualifier where if we lose, there'll be some jeopardy around World Cup qualification and topping the group. So, it feels kind of big on a footballing level, a qualification level, and then loads of other levels as well to do with just general vibes.
Definitely. This is the first game where if, Senegal was obviously relatively embarrassing and certainly not ideal from a prep perspective, but there were excuses or reasons not to be too concerned. It was a friendly. It was in the summer after a long season. There were issues around the game. And of course, there have been issues in terms of the performances in certain games, Andorra away being one of them. But this is the one where if we get beat here in a game that has a lot riding on it, yes, Serbia have dropped points already in the qualifying in their 3 games because they went to Albania and drew 0-0. But if we lose this and Serbia win all the remaining games left of the qualifying, then we won't top the group and we will therefore not automatically qualify for the World Cup, which, the jeopardy is there. It's obviously quite unlikely that'll happen, but it's still there. So, yeah, it is significant. They obviously pose a much bigger threat to us than the other teams that we played. They have players who will, especially in advanced positions, as you mentioned, be a completely different level to what we played in the qualifying campaign so far. We played them in the Euros, and we were very good for the first 10 minutes. We went ahead in the opening game, and then we were poor for the rest of it. But still, Serbia offered very, very little in terms of attacking threat that day. But we do have, a precedent for playing them recently in a competitive game. So, yeah, I think it's definitely the most important game of Tuchel's era so far. It's the first game, I think, where if things don't go well and don't go right, you're going to struggle to find any excuses or reasons why that should be the case. This is as close as it's going to come to a game as competitive as what we'll see next summer, and we need to ensure that we are bang at it and that we don't come away with people, as has been the case after certainly the camp in the summer, questioning the reign of the new boss.
Yeah, as you say, they have dropped some points where we haven't. 0-0 in Albania, where it wasn't a dominant performance either. Not a great performance from Serbia in that game, but 3-0 at home to Andorra. The win in Latvia last night, first half goal from Vlahovic. We cannot give him a look at goal on his left foot within 20-25 yards, as he showed last night. He's an excellent finisher. And then Mitro came off the bench in that game. I guess might start. Jovic is obviously an excellent striker as well. So they've got 3 good options there. And Mitro's aerial threat, Vlahovic just general sort of shooting threat is a concern. They're probably not going to be as electric on the counter-attack as Senegal were, and that was obviously a big bit of kryptonite for us in that game. So that makes me feel a bit better about things if we can manage the atmosphere and control the game in possession and territory. Make sure that I think we should be ambitious. I think we should still try and keep a very high line. And I don't think their attacking threats are best suited to counter-attacking, if that makes sense. I think where we will really struggle is if they're able to build possession freely and easily into the final third and then get crosses into the box, into their 2 strikers that have 2 number 8s arriving late as well. They've got a load of big dudes. Set pieces are going to be, a big challenge as well. So I'd love to see us really step up and almost, with respect to them and understanding their threats. I still think the best game plan will be for us to try this very aggressive high line, pack their opposition half with all of our players when we have the ball and counter-press really, really hard to try and win it back as quickly as possible. They are going really big on this. Serbia, we've been told by those in the know, although yes, we played them at the Euros in the summer of 24, this is the first time that they have hosted England in Belgrade as Serbia. And so they are going big on that. And I think it's going to be, as you'd imagine, what did Declan Rice describe it as? Not a volatile atmosphere, some other word. It'll be difficult for the players in some sense. They have got a partial stadium closure. They must keep at least 15% of the capacity behind the goals closed, which feels like a oddly specific and not particularly damaging sanction, but fine. And as mentioned, lots and lots of good players. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the challenge. I'm excited for the fact that we get to see England play against a good team again, and excited to see the players and the manager step up and deliver a performance. I can just about buy the excuses about the Senegal game, just about, or at least I recognise the fact that end of a long season, June camps, blah, 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 fine. Leave that behind. That there aren't those excuses here, and we won't accept any excuses for a poor performance. I actually think, I sort of questioned our psychological DNA when it comes to these sorts of games against Andorra, which they seem to find it quite hard to get up for. With these games, I'm I back our team to step up to the pressure. I don't worry necessarily about us like folding because they'll find the atmosphere difficult or the opposition difficult. I think the group of players that we have right now kind of want a challenge, kind of relish
Definitely
a challenge.
agree.
And that excites me as well. What lineup do you want to see? Obviously, Jack Grealish is not in the squad, so what lineup would you like to see here?
I think Grealish has to come in at left wing. No, it's I guess kind of more of the same. I mean, there's no one who I can think of who necessarily kind of swan into the side, who was left out previously. I guess you could make a case for Gordon to come in for Rashford on the left, possibly. I don't see why we would change the back four off the back of that. Having said in the in the pre-squad announcement pod that I thought we might see the keepers rotated. Quite clearly, if we were going to rotate keepers, it would have been for the Andorra game, and there's absolutely no reason to change the keeper for Tuesday night. So back five remains the same. Anderson has to start as the holding player. Rice remains in that role, so I guess it's Eze and off the back of Madueke's performance, probably just Eze and Rashford whose roles could be up for grabs. Maybe Rodgers in for Eze could be another one. You?
Yeah, I see it pretty similarly. I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that having told me directly in the press conference that he saw Konza and Stones, as it was then, challenging for the right centre-back position, and Gahey and Byrne challenging for the left centre-back position, that he benched Konza and played Gahey in that right centre-back position. That was surprising to me. But I really like Konza.
I reckon he might say, so when Stones came out, we moved Mark over to being the right side and brought Jarrod in to be the kind of backup right-footed, left-sided option. Yeah,
so it'll be interesting if it is Gahey and Konza. That gives an idea of the pecking order. If it's Konza and Gahey, which is a change that I wouldn't hate seeing, that could be interesting as well. Albeit, as I say it, with the height that they have, it's probably worth having Byrne in the team. So it might be Konza and Byrne, quite frankly, thinking aloud from that point of view. The only other thing is at left back. Go on.
I was just say with Byrne, because he's obviously, anyone who disrespects the qualities of Dan Byrne, I think, hasn't been watching enough. But I do think games like yesterday, I'd rather maybe have another option, just in terms of he is very competent on the ball, but he's pretty safe on the ball. Like he's a safe passer, and maybe there's someone who can move it a little bit quicker than Byrne on the ball. But I think he'll, there's no reason why he should be taken out, I think, for Tuesday night, especially as you say, given the physical qualities of whether it's Jovic, whether it's Mitrovic, Vlahovic. We're going to need someone from set pieces, but also an open play, and the fact that he's also quick on the turn, or quick enough on the turn for a big lad, makes him I'd be surprised if he's taken out.
Yeah, me too. I think at left back, I'd be more than happy with Lewis Skelly starting again, but I'd also be more than happy seeing Livramento come in, and I'd be more than happy seeing Spence come in. They've got Zivkovic, I think, the right wing back, who's pretty dribbly, pretty lively. And, if we think that the reason Spencer's been called up is because of his defensive 1v1 performances against dribbly wide players, that might be something to look at. Equally, Livramento, with one of the defensive performances of the season last season against Salah in the Carabao Cup final, so could easily do a job there. But Lewis Skelly hasn't done anything wrong when he's played for England and offers a real versatility as well. Maybe they'll go for a bit of added height and take Skelly out. We will see. Definitely no reason to break up that midfield too, as you mentioned. I think there'll be a big meltdown if he names Jordan Henderson and says it's because he brings experience to volatile atmospheres. And then, in the front line, I think Madueke should keep his place. I think that there's an argument that either Rodgers or Gibbs-White, who looked like he was having fun when he came on with a couple of nice back heels and flicks and quick combination play. Wouldn't hate seeing one of those two playing in the number 10 role, and there's either moving to the left, where I'd like to see him play in that left wing role, or, as you say, maybe Gordon coming in for that one with Harry Kane up front. So, England-Serbia Tuesday night. We'll be recapping that probably post-match. Join us at the Volley in Old Street, in London. Ignore the tube strike. Come and hang out.
The line is running, so if you didn't know that, you can get to Liverpool Street and walk 15 minutes. Just a 15-minute walk. Wow.
We're talking Elizabeth line. We're talking overground services. We're talking buses. We're talking limes. We're talking walking. We're talking walking. See you there. Thanks very much for listening. Let us know what you thought about the game in the YouTube and or Spotify comments. If you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be a big help to us. If you could drop us a 5-star rating on Spotify as well. Equally, that would be sparkling stuff from you. Cheers. Thanks for listening. Be back on Tuesday night with a recap of the Serbia game. Go well.